looked at as them walking things back, clarifying certain things, but there's a lot of stuff that can be changed as we kind of move forward. So we'll make sure to give that general overview.
So this has come right now, the release that you're talking about?
Yeah, so the release about 30 minutes ago.
30 minutes.
Caroline Leavitt, who is the U.S. press secretary representing the president of the United States, like that's who clarifying some things, but there's a lot of clarification at the moment.
All right. Okay, I think we wait for 5 minutes. We have some more people joining in, and then we can get started.
Okay, for sure. Let me just close the door.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Right. Should we begin?
Yeah, I think that we can begin.
Yep. All right, so let's start. I think we'll have more people joining in as we go. So guys, thank you so much for joining in. And as you know, this webinar is about the latest H1B proclamation, making sense of it, getting a sense of direction as you know what's going to come next. And we have with us Nicole. Nicole is the managing attorney at Manifest Law. She has extensive experience in employment-based and talent-based visas. Nicole, we're really looking forward to your advice. A lot of confusion, a lot of stress amongst people here, and we're really looking at clarity, as to what exactly has happened and what can we, expect going forward. So yeah,
100%. 100%. So thank you so much, Shashi, for having me. I know that a lot of you are very distressed. A lot of you feel a little bit unstable. Hopefully today's conversation would really give you guys some at least clarification on everything that's happening right now, even us as attorneys that are dealing with this. And we've dealt with this for many different years, different administrations, having been a part of immigration. The reality is that we even just got some new clarifications almost like 30 minutes to 40 minutes ago. So hopefully we're going to give you guys the most up-to-date interpretations right now of exactly what is going on with the H1B. But again, thank you so much for having me, Shachi.
So maybe we can start with an update as to what's new, especially the update that you mentioned, that you received 30 minutes ago. And then we have questions. So the group has a lot of questions. So probably you could address them, and then you can give us a sense of the next steps and what can be done going forward from there.
100%. So I'll take like one step back to just explain first to the general viewers what even happened, right? Because I feel like it was a roller coaster. A lot of people were seeing a lot of different news articles. So taking that one step back, what happened is that on Friday evening, the Trump administration announced a new proclamation that directed two things, right? Number one, which was a little bit less of a tumultuous thing or a controversial thing, was the gold card program, this like pathway or program where they could charge $1 million to $2 million in order to grant someone a pathway to a green card. So that was one thing that they did. But the second thing that they did, which was what was creating all the news media, all of the back and forth and a lot of crisis, let's call it moments, was the introduction of a possible $100,000 fee, a supplemental fee for individuals who were seeking H1Bs. More specifically, once the proclamation was published, it was saying that it was restricting entry for foreign nationals who were trying to enter the United States on an H1B, and saying that you need to prove when you enter, starting at 12:01 Eastern Daylight Time on Sunday. So it was tomorrow, September 21st. You needed to prove that this $100,000 payment was made. Now, that created a lot of confusion overnight in terms of who did this apply to? Why is it being applied overnight? Can I travel? Can I not travel? Is it for new applicants? Is it for people who are just outside of the country who are renewing? Anything like that? That was not made clear. And what added a little bit more confusion was that there was a live stream. So when they signed the proclamation, there was a lot of conversation back and forth. There were questions being asked from Mr. Lutnick and also some of the White House representatives there, along with President Trump, that also added more fuel to, so what is exactly happening? Because those answers were very different from what the proclamation looked like. So what was the latest update that happened today? Well, because of all of this confusion and a lot of kind of subjectivity and interpretations, the press secretary released a statement on X, formerly known as Twitter, where they basically clarified three main points. And I would say it's like 3.5 points, right? So point number one is that the $100,000 fee is not going to be an annual fee. It's going to be a one-time fee that applies only to that particular petition. Number two was that those who already hold H-1B visas and are currently outside of the country right now will not be charged $100,000 to re-enter. So H-1B visa holders can leave, they can re-enter the country to the same extent as they normally would, and whatever ability that they had to do that is not impacted just because of that proclamation that came out. And then the third item that was pretty significant is that it only applies to new visas, not renewals and not current visa holders. And this is why I said 3.5, because I actually found that as a practitioner, the last sentence of what she said was the most significant, that it will first apply in the next upcoming lottery cycle. So that means that the way that this is written in terms of the press secretary's statement is that this should not really be starting until essentially March of 2026. Which, I think it's great that they're providing these clarifications, but I think it adds a little bit more confusion, right? Because when we're all reading the proclamation and we're reading the statement, we're like, okay, so what is it, right? What is it going to be? So that's the update.
But does seem to give a sense of relief from what you're saying, right?
Yeah, I would say that the moment that that dropped, we did reach out to a lot of our different corporate clients, our different individual clients who were directly impacted. And we said, listen, this is probably the most that we're going to get until there's like formal guidances that are coming into the future. It seems that the government's perspective at this time, at least when we're taking a look at this statement, is that it isn't going to be impacting individuals who already have visas in place, who are presently outside of the country, people who are technically already approved. But at the end of the day, like I will say, we run conservatively here at Manifest. I always tell people to proceed with caution, right? I do prefer if people are in the United States rather than outside of the United States.
Right. So how much of like comfort can we draw from these statements which have come today? That does it mean that people who have a visa and who have the petition approved this year are safe? Do we assume that, or do we still have that?
I will say that the breath of relief that everyone should have is the fact that this seems to be something that doesn't have a full plan at the moment, right? So usually for things to go into effect, there needs to be like a rollout, there needs to be some level of implementation, but it seems very clear from the various statements that there isn't necessarily a direct plan at the moment. And where there isn't a direct plan is usually room for whether it's potential litigation to basically express that, hey, there is no plan, even if somebody tried to enter, how could they pay this 100K even if they wanted to, right? Is a clear question. I will say that that whole mad rush to come back to the United States may not feel as urgent, right? So whereas yesterday when I was talking to a lot of people, I'm like, listen, if you can get on a plane and you can come back before the 21st, you should do it. But if not, when you're in this kind of scenario with this kind of presentation from the press secretary, I do think that, hey, maybe you don't necessarily have to jump on a plane right now, but I still am telling people the sooner that you can come back, the better it is going to be for you, just in case this changes all over again. What if there's a new statement that's made?
Mhm. Got it. And what would be the next steps? What can we expect on Monday to happen?
So I think the expectation, especially from us immigration lawyers in this community, is that maybe someone will do a class action lawsuit to issue something known as a temporary restraining order. So just as a gentle reminder for everyone, you know, when the government released these proclamations related to birthright citizenship, and I think we all know it has been repeatedly challenged in so many different scales, has been temporarily stayed, extended, all these kinds of things. To be honest with you, I am expecting the same thing to potentially occur with this particular proclamation, right? It is very significant. If anything, is pretty seismic, right? Whether it's a good or bad different is a different kind of conversation. But from a fact-based perspective, this is a big change. What a lot of legal analysts are contending is that this is supposed to go through some sort of formal rulemaking process. It's supposed to go through some sort of proposal. People are supposed to be able to comment on that proposal, and the government's supposed to be able to establish their reasoning for doing this. So Monday, what I think is going to happen is maybe we're going to get this temporary restraining order that says, even if this were to come to fruition, you cannot do this until we figure this out in court. That's one. Number two is maybe we'll keep getting more and more clarifications, right? Maybe we'll get more statements from the press secretary. Maybe we'll get a formal briefing, like an actual press conference that's recorded where people are answering questions related to this new program. It's also very possible that USCIS and the Department of State may release their own statements and guidances related to this. Another aspect that I really want to emphasize is that the government built into this proclamation the exceptions, right? They said there could be exceptions to this rule based on industries, based on certain companies. So I'm also curious if maybe by Monday, Tuesday, or the coming weeks that we're going to get some of those clarifications on what would be potentially exempted from this program.
Yep. And we also had a lot of questions about exemptions, particularly, I think, from people who are working in healthcare, from nurses, doctors, pharmacists, and people working on certain research programs, because the proclamation itself had that as a category, right? So do you think this exemption will apply?
So that's the thing, is that the proclamation did not specifically cite any industry, right? And if the proclamation stands as is, even if you got your H1B through a CAP exempt application, or you're here on a Conrad 30 waiver as a foreign medical graduate going through that kind of program, the government's proclamation as it stands still applies to those individuals. We actually do need to wait until the Secretary of Homeland Security designates what those exemptions are. Now, as a practitioner, having been in this field and having seen kind of the COVID pandemic, the only thing I can think of that is akin to this kind of exceptional rule was the national interest exceptions. If anybody remembers that during COVID, the only people who could travel into the United States and get a visa issued was those who can prove what is known as an NIE, if you were in a critical sector. So it could be a functionally similar type of system. If you're in healthcare, maybe you will reap those rewards. But as of right now, as of today, this is also still very impactful for you.
All right. And what about the CAP exempt H1Bs? Is there any mention of anything about them?
No, because they cite the same regulations that govern those CAP exempt H1Bs. Because remember, for everybody, CAP exempt H1Bs, even if they're special, they're still ultimately H1Bs, right? They have the same requirements. The only thing is that, hey, instead of having to do the lottery, you now have to prove that your organization qualifies as being exempted from the lottery. Being exempted from the lottery doesn't necessarily mean you are exempted from this rule.
All right. And what about the dependent visas? Because I think that's another concern that is this just limited to the H1 or do the H4 also kind of fall under this?
So on the proclamation, there isn't really a direct mention on dependence, but let's think about it on a practical level, right? And the reason why I want to talk about it on a practical level is remember when the travel bans ever started, like even under Trump 1.0, there was mass confusion at the borders, at the ports of entry at airports on who is allowed in and who isn't allowed in, right? So let's say you were from a country that was banned. I was born in Iran, I'm an Iranian citizen, but I have a green card. Am I allowed to be entered, yes or no? Actually, based on the interpretations of the travel ban, they were supposed to be allowed entry. But the officers didn't know. They weren't sure. We were getting phone calls related to that when all of that was happening, right? So what I'm trying to extrapolate from that particular story is that I can see an H4 traveler trying to come into the United States, right? Based on the way that this proclamation is written, them encountering an officer who is not sure, who's basically like, do I need to double check if the primary spouse has paid the $100,000? What if it was just, let's say it's the wife who was on the H4 who happened to travel to go home for whatever reason, and the primary H1B spouse never left the country? What do we do in that scenario? Do we need to assess the $100,000 fee, yes or no? It's not clear. It's not clear at the moment. So when somebody asks me, what do I do as an H4? I still tell them, you know what? I think it's better to be here than not here. If you can come back to the country sooner rather than later, and the pressure's not as high because of this press secretary's statement, you're much in a defensible position when you're here in the United States.
Right. Nicole, I think there's still a lot of doubts about, the different categories within
Right.
H1, still whether do I come under this, do I not come under this? So probably I can list the categories and you can just give us a quick overview, based on the recent updates that you've got.
Okay.
So the first one is approved but not stamped. So my petition is issued. I haven't gone for stamping yet. Does this new fee, is it applicable for me? So I have a 797, but I haven't gone for stamping yet.
So this is where I'll tell people, please don't go for stamping right now. I wouldn't, even with the press secretary's statement, because look at the language. It says visa holders, current visa holders. Are you a visa holder if you have an I-797 approved without the visa stamped in your passport? Because from a very technical perspective or a legal perspective, when you have an H-1B in the United States, when you've been approved for it, let's say as a change of status, right? You're in H-1B status, but you don't necessarily have an H-1B visa. A visa actually references that entry document that's in your passport. So if I was trying to take the most legalese, technical interpretation of what the press secretary is saying, it's really possible that you are impacted by the fact that you don't have a visa at this time. So what I really want to express to a person in that scenario is that if you don't have to travel and you are in the United States, you should stay put until we have that clear guidance that expresses what counts as a current visa holder and what doesn't count as a current visa holder.
Mm-hmm. All right. The second category is extensions and renewals. So are the extensions and renewals which are going to be filed after this date, right? Do they also require the 100K payment?
So I want to make clear that the way that the proclamation is written, and also the way that the press secretary's statement is written, is that all of this has to do with travel. It has nothing to do with the domestic extensions process, right? And the domestic, let's say, change of employer process. If you are physically in the United States and you file to extend your status and you do not leave the country, it doesn't seem to trigger this $100,000 concept, let's call it, because a lot of the checks that are being utilized under this proclamation has to do with your entry. Look at the way that the proclamation was stated. It's a restriction on entry of certain non-immigrants, right? So all I can say is that based on the language, based on what is being said on this proclamation at the moment, the extensions and the renewals are not being impacted. It's your ability to travel at the moment that's being impacted.
All right. The third category are the lottery selections which are pending. So those who are selected in the 2025 lottery but waiting for their approval.
I see. So when you're waiting for your approval, I really want to clarify, right? Is it that you filed for this filing as a change of status? Let's say you were on OPT and you filed to change your status from that OPT into the H1B based on that lottery win, then that's a different conversation. And I would say you should be okay. You can stay in the United States. I still don't encourage people to travel until there's more clarity, because even with these 3 bullet points that were given to us from the US press secretary, it still doesn't clarify everything else, which is functionally how does all of this really work. For those of you who didn't file as a change of status and filed it as consular approval, that's where things get a little bit tricky, right? The reason why things get a little bit tricky in that kind of context is because it's still very unclear to me, what is the definition of a current visa holder? Is it that you already have a visa stamped in your passport, or that you already have an approved I-797? Because on a technical basis, that 797 is not a visa. You have an approved status.
Right. So basically, we're not clear on the language as of now, what they
Yeah.
are considering as, whether it's just a
Exactly.
pedestrian or a stamp.
I think where I'm the most comfortable is if someone has a visa stamp in their passport already, right? That's where I can say, okay, based on the language that was selected when they were expressing these things, right? Especially from the press secretary that occurred about 45 minutes to an hour ago. That to me is like, yeah, that's you are current visa holder.
Right. And I think what you said just now also applies to the change of status, right? Like people
Yeah,
changing from L2 to H1, F1 to H1.
exactly.
The same rule applies to that.
Correct.
All right. So we have a few questions from the audience here. I just asked them. Eric, you raised your hand. Would you like to ask the question?
Yes. Uh, Thank you for this meeting. So I have a quick question regarding this $100, 100K fee. So right now I'm on an F1 OPT and my cap exempt employer applied my petition for both H1 and H4. I'm still waiting on a result and I'm still in the US in the country. Will I be impacted with this new rule?
So you shouldn't be, because you're still in the country. A lot of the focus of the proclamation is your ability to travel, right? Because the way that the proclamation is written is that if you leave the country and you try to enter on the United States on the H1B, even if it was approved now or even 200 years ago, for all intents and purposes, they're saying that they need to check whether or not you've paid this $100,000 fee, right? So if you're asking me what is the best thing that I can do in this situation to try to avoid being impacted, it's stay in the country, do not leave, get the H1B and the H4 approved. And you said that you filed it as a change of status, and stay here until you get more clarity.
Yeah, it's been a premium process as well, so hopefully shouldn't be having a result, right? This shouldn't impact the result as well.
Yeah, because it's a domestic filing and you already filed it as well.
Okay, thank you so much.
Mhm.
All right. Pawan, do you have a question?
Yeah. What about people who are in academia and will be on H1 visa?
So the government has not provided any exceptions or identified any specific industries at the moment. They left like a carve out. So essentially in the proclamation, I think it's like section 1, item C, they basically said that, hey, the Secretary of Homeland Security can make a judgment call of what industries or companies or individuals are exempted from this requirement for national interest, so long as it doesn't have an impact on national security. So it is possible that academics, researchers, and the like could be exempted from this, but that's not clarified yet, and that is not the case at the moment.
Thank you.
So we have one question in the chat. It says the press secretary listed that the new fee being applicable from the next lottery cycle, that's 26, 27. Shouldn't that exclude people from H1B with approved I-797 but without a visa stamp yet?
Technically, it should, but again, like, guys, this is a statement, right? This is not exactly what the president signed. Like, I think I have to make that very clear, and that's the reason why even us immigration attorneys are like, so what do we listen to, right? Because the proclamation was signed, it was published, you can read it, but what they signed feels very different from what she said, like literally 45 minutes ago. So at this point, I always take the most conservative interpretation because it protects my clients the most, right? So what I want to make clear for everyone is that technically, yeah, it's great. Like if the statement holds itself to be true, then technically you wouldn't be applicable for this particular $100,000 fee. But I want to be careful about the language, right? Because she said that this doesn't begin until the lottery cycle, the next lottery cycle. So what does begin, right, is my question. Is it that your extension now counts, like you need to pay for that? Or is it when you file for a new employment, right, just because you happen to be outside of the country and doing consular processing? So that, like, those technical divisions are still not clear based on the 3.5 bullet points that were provided to us. I think what I've seen so far that I really want to express to everyone here is that no matter what, an H1B is a very technical filing. I think a lot of you have seen the form I-129. There's a lot of boxes that need to be checked, a lot of things that need to kind of be clarified when you file the application. And when we're reading all of these things from the proclamation to the statement, to this day, we still are not clear. When does it apply? How does it apply? I can only tell you that conservatively, it may still apply to you.
There's one more question in the chat, and this is what a lot of our clients have been asking us, that is there any chance this extends to other visa categories, especially the L1?
So at this time, the proclamation is specifically for an H1B, but I think what I want to express to every single person here is that it exposes the vulnerability, right, of relying solely on just one visa category. So for example, if I'm on an L1 and I only think about the L1, and then suddenly the rug gets pulled under me, the same way that it felt like just a few hours ago or yesterday for H1B holders. You're talking about an institution, right? A visa like regime or scheme that has been around for decades, that has been relatively unchanged. Overnight, it was like a level of implosion that is unreal. Right? So what does this mean? You guys need to treat immigration like a stovetop. You need to have as many pots going for you. So even if this particular proclamation doesn't target the L1, what is to say that next week there isn't going to be a proclamation that does focus on the L1? Because the government's perspective at the moment, or the administration, seems to be pushing towards enforcement, compliance, and really strong immigration reform. So my biggest piece of advice is you guys need to start considering what are your alternatives, or at least planning for what those alternatives look like. Do not restrict yourself into one visa. Try to explore other categories that are out there.
All right, makes sense. We have a question from Harpreet. Harpreet, would you like to ask?
Hi, Nicole. Hi, Sachi.
Hi.
Thank you for hosting this. I have a question for someone who is on STEM OPT, and the sponsor will be sponsoring next year for the first time. Will this proclamation applies or not?
It seems like it would. That is the one thing I will say the language seems to be very clear about, is that this is going to start impacting individuals who are in the next lottery cycle, right? But here's the thing, is that all of this just happened, right? It literally just happened on Friday evening. There is a lot of chatter within the immigration community about a potential lawsuit. Is it actually possible for the government to bring about this level of change and fees through this executive action? So I know that the first gut feeling for a lot of people is, oh my God, does this mean that people are not going to enroll me in the lottery anymore? But so much can happen between now, next week, even a month from now, and even leading up until the lottery cycle that's occurring this upcoming March. Right? So that being said, don't kind of lose out hope, but take heed my words that I said earlier. Try to figure out alternative pathways, right? If you're in STEM, try doing some research to see if there's a J1 specialist program or a J1 research scholar program that you can try to sell your company on or your employer on that may allow you to work in the United States in lieu of utilizing the H1B program.
All right. Puneet, would you like to go next?
Sure, thank you. Thank you so much, guys, and thank you very much for hosting this. My question is, I'm in US since 2015, and my GC process is like I have approved 140. I have two approved 140s. Now, my question is, this proclamation, will it affect the renewals of H1B going forward? Because I'm getting renewals every 3 years since 2015 till my priority date gets current. So that's what my confusion is. If you can help me out to answer.
So I'm so sorry, just very quickly, someone in the chat just mentioned that USCIS just released a memorandum. So I want to make sure that I always give the most kind of updated information before I answer some of these questions. So it says here in the chat, Manish, you said it's available on uscis.gov. Can you send the very specific link so everybody on this channel can have access to that PDF? Perfect.
Yep.
Wow, look at that. See, guys, real time. So I'm going to give you some real time reviews here.
I
Okay.
think when we finish, we might just have a new set of rules.
I know. I feel like every 20 minutes, guys, every 10 to 20 minutes. Let's look at this, right? It says that okay, pursuant to that, okay, except for those aliens who know this guidance, voila. This only applies prospectively to petitions that have not yet been filed. The proclamation does not apply to aliens who are beneficiaries of petitions that were filed prior. Okay, that's good. Are the beneficiaries of currently approved petitions or in the possession of validly issued H1B non-immigrant visas. Finally, the most clear document, USCIS policy guidance, guys.
I think we can all have
breath of relief. Breath of relief.
Calm down your heart rate.
Right? So this is really significant. So I want to clarify for everyone. So thank you. Sorry, Puneet, like I'll make sure to answer your question in a second, right? The breath of relief for everyone here is that this is probably the strongest document so far. We already have the press secretary statement. Now we have actual USCIS policy guidance, right? So let's clarify exactly who this does not apply to, right?
Let me share my screen so that everybody can see this, right?
So yep. So I'm going to clarify very quickly who it does not apply to. This proclamation, the one that came out on Friday evening, does not apply to beneficiaries of petitions that were filed prior to the effective date of the proclamation. So before the 21st of September, midnight, which means that I know so many immigration attorneys who are going to file online right now for H1B applicants, right now, right? Or are beneficiaries of currently approved petitions or are in possession or validly issued H1B non-immigrant visas, those are the individuals that are not applicable to this kind of scenario. So that is pretty significant news in my point of view. But I do have one curiosity, right? Because this is something that, I'm sorry, because as an attorney, we kind of know like what the gaps are. But what if you were previously approved for an H1B? You left the country for a year because you decided to work in Canada for a little bit, but you wanted to resuscitate that H1B because you got a brand new job at Meta and you want to come back to the US. Does that count? I mean, I was previously approved for an H1B, who knows, right? So I'm very curious because that is not what is discussed. And if you take a look at the press secretary's statement, that it kind of says that it doesn't impact until starting this upcoming lottery, but the USCIS memo says that it's everything after September 21st. So which is it, guys? Which is it?
I think the statement in bold, probably we can take some relief from that.
Yes.
Prospectively to petitions that have not yet been filed. So probably we can refer to that for now and just hope that, at least this stays good.
Right. So that being said, Puneet, I'm so sorry that we cut you off. Can you repeat your question again? Because we had this breaking news update in the middle of this conversation.
Sure. Actually, this proclamation from USCIS, which is released just now, answered my question. That since I'm a beneficiary of an H1B since 2015, this does not apply to me, right?
So it's not that you've been a beneficiary. It says here that it's individuals who filed or have been approved prior to then, right? Or beneficiaries of currently approved petitions or are in possession of validly issued H1B non-immigrant visas. If I was being really picky and choosy about this, right? What happens if you decide to file an extension in a year's time? Right? So that is kind of where I'm in a little bit of a dicey situation in interpreting this, is because if I had to poke holes in the memorandum, if I was hired to do that, I would say, well, it just says people who filed a petition prior to the proclamation, so people who are pending right now, beneficiaries of currently approved petitions, that means things that are still valid at the moment, right? Or are in possession of validly issued H-1B non-immigrant visas, which is a valid stamp. So what happens when you're approaching an expiration and you're trying to extend it after this proclamation or after that cutoff date that USCIS just said? So it may not impact you now, but when I'm reading this USCIS memo, what happens in a year from now? Or what happens 2 years from now or 3 years from now when I need to renew my H-1B? That is still unclear, even from this memo.
Yep. Hmm.
Sure. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you.
Release for now, but we still have to see what happens
Yeah.
with the existing, right? Okay. I think we can take a couple more questions. Yep.
Sure, how about it?
Chetan?
Hi, yeah, thank you guys for hosting this meeting. In light of the new information, I feel I know what the answer is going to be, but I'm still going to ask the question for the benefit of everybody here and people posting in the chat. So I changed my job. I got my H1B petition approved, and I'm here in India for renewal. I just got here a couple of days back, and I have an appointment on Monday. But I also have a valid H1B stamp until the 30th of September. So I have two options now, either go to the interview or go back to the US.
So do you still have a valid H-1B stamp? I just want to double check that. Or did I mishear that?
Until the 30th of September.
So, and you already have an approved petition, right? For
I
the
have an approved petition, and this is my extension.
Let's see here. I want to like double check the language because language is so important, guys, right? It seems that it doesn't apply to people who are beneficiaries and they're using the word or. So or statements are important because it means that you only need to meet one of those 3 items that the government listed, right? So if I'm interpreting this USCIS memo accurately, you should be able to come back even if you get a brand new visa stamp thereafter, because you are already a beneficiary of an approved, currently valid approval notice, right? That's how I would take this USCIS memo. I would probably say like continue your visa stamping process at the moment. It's just, man, like, let me tell you, it's been such a roller coaster, but if I had to take the USCIS memo to heart, you should be okay.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Mansi?
Hi, Sachi. Hello, Nicole. So I have a question because I have a change of employer petition due next week. By due, I mean they have not yet submitted it. So does this affect me because they will submit it sometime next week, right? It's I have a valid visa until 2027, but I don't have a change of employer petition submitted.
See, and this is why the USCIS memo, the breath of relief that I have is that for some people, they don't have to rush to come back to the US. But the breath of relief that I do not have is actually this specific scenario, right? Which is that, well, I technically meet one of the categories on USCIS in the or statement, right? I have a currently valid H-1B visa stamp. But I don't have a valid petition because I am waiting for a change of employer to be filed, right? So in that kind of scenario, what do we do? How do we interpret this? I'm still a big fan of saying that this is an or statement. You've met one of the 3 items that the government says it does not apply to you because of it. However, just to keep it safe, Manasi, if there's any way that your company can file today online, I would strongly encourage them to do so, right? Unless they take the perspective that the or statement is enough for it to not have an impact on you, or maybe the press secretary's statement that came out 40 minutes ago that said that it doesn't apply until the upcoming lottery change, even though the memo doesn't really say that, holds true. I can only tell you that when I take the most conservative pathway, I would say, hey, I would rather file now just in case.
Okay. Today is Sunday, so I don't know.
Well, I know today is Sunday or it's Saturday here in the United States,
alright.
but H-1Bs can be filed online. And when they're filed online, they're receipted immediately. So it can be receipted prior to September 21st. It's paper filings that really struggle because no matter what, even if I mailed it today, it's not going to arrive until Monday.
Makes sense. And I have one more question for a friend. I'll quickly ask it, right? Because they are not able to raise their hand. Their H1B is expiring in April, and they have an extension due in April 2026. So do you think these fees will apply to them?
You know,
Mhm.
same statement where it's like, do we trust the or statement, yes or no? If I was being very conservative, I would tell people you need to file something sooner rather than later. So the earliest that you usually can file for an extension or some sort of change is usually 6 months prior to the expiration date of your H1B. But here's a little secret. You can file an amendment if you're changing the job slightly, or if there's something that's materially different between your old job and what your job is going to be. I would suggest strongly to the employer that maybe filing an amendment now would be better. But at the end of the day, obviously, if she's not prepared, because you need to do this whole LCA process before you can even file, there's not really much that can be done. I do think there is a slight possibility that your friend could be impacted, because again, this memo still doesn't clarify like what happens in the scenario where you are currently valid, but then in the future, when you want to apply for the renewal and you no longer have a currently valid approval notice, do I need to pay the $100,000 fee? Yes or no?
Perfect. Thank you for allowing me to ask 2 questions.
Yeah, no worries.
Ankita?
Hi, Saji. Hi, Nicole. Thanks for
Hi.
allowing me to ask. Yeah, so I am in the US currently and I have H1B extension approved till March of 2028. But from the time this extension has got approved, I didn't go to India yet. So my question is, if I happen to travel to India before March of 2028, what is the impact in my situation? To re-enter, will I be needed to pay this fee?
So
Or
okay.
I also have option to change to L2 status because right now my husband is on L1. So what is the best thing to do in my situation?
So this whole question of what is the best and not the best is very hard to answer right now, right? Because all of this just happened. So I will tell a lot of clients, don't immediately jump the gun to file to L2 because nothing is technically effectuated just yet, right? And there's so much that can happen between now and even a week from now. But again, when I'm reading like the way that this memorandum is written, like I sit here and I'm like kind of laughing at myself because I know as an attorney, like all the holes that I can poke into this memorandum very quickly, right? Because you just mentioned, okay, so I have this approval until March of 2028. If I leave the country, can I get a visa stamp and can I come back? Well, even though USCIS says that the proclamation doesn't apply to you because you're already valid, you have one of the 3 items. I'm here to tell you that USCIS is not the Department of State. Who controls the ability to issue those visa stamps is not USCIS. It's the Department of State, a whole different agency that isn't USCIS. I'm curious to see any updates to the Foreign Adjudicators Manual, the FAM that we call it, that determines how the Department of State actually does these applications at the US consulate. So I would just tell people, it's still kind of, I wouldn't even say my motto, but it's like a trademark sentence at this point. Travel is a luxury at the moment, right? You cannot travel unless you absolutely need to, because the most defensible position that anyone could ever be when it comes to any roller coaster ride that is the immigration system here in the United States is to be in the United States, because you have to deal with USCIS. They usually have to give you some ability to rebut or to argue, to appeal. Whereas when you're outside of the United States, all you have is the Department of State. All you have at best is CBP, who have a lot of discretion and unilateral authority to make judgment calls that you can't necessarily appeal.
Got it. Okay. So what I understand is I should not travel until it's absolutely necessary, and I should also not rush to switching to L2 because there might be different updates.
Exactly. And basically, what I tell people is don't be the guinea pig. Don't be the person who's going to test this out for the first time. Because you're approved all the way until March 2028. Trust me, a lot of people are going to go through this and we'll find out, does it work? Does it not work? Is this going to be approved, not approved? You'll find out from other people.
Okay. Got it. Sounds good. Thank you.
No
So
problem.
what you're saying is if something comes from Department of State, that's going to be more credible than this
At
US.
least the Department of State will talk a lot about the visa stamping issuance portion of it and the ability to enter the United States. Because
Nicole?
USCIS, I think, is speaking mainly about domestically what's happening.
And what do you think is the probability of something coming from them by Monday?
Well, I don't know. That's the hard part. I don't think anybody expected USCIS to be releasing something today, even. I am always pleasantly surprised when the government is working on the weekends, because the one benefit I could ever dream of being a government employee is that weekends are not usually work days, right? So I think I'm pleasantly surprised that they're doing this. And I bet you it's because they're seeing the tumultuousness that has quickly kind of come about from social media. I think all of us have seen people are like fighting to get off of planes, right?
All right. We'll take a few more questions. Prashant?
Hey, hi, thanks, Sachi. So yeah, the question that I have here is, right now I'm hearing the news of an annual fee. I did not really read in written statement anywhere about an annual fee that is to be paid. Um, but the only thing that I hear about is a single one-time 100K fee that you have to pay once you re-enter the US. So I'm more concerned about, like, yeah, how does that apply? Do we have any idea, or can we infer anything from that?
So press secretary actually clarified this in her first point, where she said it's not going to be an annual fee. And I
Oh,
know that that's so confusing,
yeah.
because when there was the conversation with Mr. Lutnick, one of the White House officials that was there for the live stream, it was discussed that it would be an annual fee. They even had this quote that was published on an article that said, well, we don't really know the payment schedule yet. We don't know if we're going to ask 100,000, in 1 year, or we're going to ask for an upfront payment of $300,000 for 3 years. But now we're getting the statement directly from the White House through the press secretary as a representative of the President of the United States saying, no, it's not going to be an annual fee. And if you take a look at the proclamation, it doesn't even really make references to an annual fee. So my gut feeling right now, just based on everything that's presented in front of me, is that it's not going to be an annual fee, but a one-time assessed fee. But again, the question is, when are they going to assess it, and how are they going to assess it is a good question.
Right. Nicole, I think one of the points that you mentioned, which is kind of like running in my mind right now, is not to have everything, in one place, all your options, and to kind of be aware of what are the other alternatives.
Right.
Probably can spend a few minutes on that first, and then we can maybe jump back to the questions that what are the other options that we have at this point of time, and how do we go about assessing those?
100%. So I think alternatives are always good for everyone. Every time you have a plan A, you always want a B, a C, all the way through Z if you could, right? The more the merrier. And I want to emphasize the one set of statements that I heard through the live stream. It really captured my attention when both Lutnick and the representatives, and also President Trump, when they were talking about these proclamations, were really emphasizing. They kept on saying the word, we want to bring extraordinary ability individuals to the US. We want to bring the best of individuals to the US. So that isn't a statement that's like, hey, we don't want zero foreign workers. We just want to make sure that the system brings the best and the brightest to the United States, right? We want to reward in a merit-based system. At least that's kind of according to the statements that they were making. But word choice really matters, guys. When they kept on saying extraordinary ability, when they kept on saying extraordinary talent, top talent, and they keep on repeating things like national interest over and over again, you know what that makes me think of? The O1. It makes me think of the O1 visa and all of the tracks that are available out there that focuses on bringing the most credible and top tier talent to the United States. Now, I'm not saying that every single person should be investing all of their time and energy into the O1, but you guys should really be considering it, because the O1 doesn't have a lottery limit, right? And it is something that I would like to think that any administration wants to highlight. Look, we have this amazing extraordinary ability program. We're only bringing the best and the brightest to the United States through this mechanism where we assess if a person is someone that truly will contribute beneficially to the US in terms of being the best of talent. So for all of you out there who are on OPT, STEM OPT, or even if you're in the middle of schooling right now, the earlier that you start building into the direction of proving that you are extraordinary and that you are in the top of your field, the more likely you're going to be rewarded, whether it's this administration or the next, because that word choice really mattered. So, because that's what I think that they're leaning towards. I can't prove it, but why would they keep repeating the sentences over and over again? And I really also want to note the second item that I thought was really interesting is that, they were targeting specifically H1Bs. So you should open yourself up to other avenues. Is it potentially that you could work for a company that was willing to send you abroad for 1 year and then bring you back into the United States to qualify for other visas? I know the Bains and McKinseys of the world do that when somebody doesn't win the H1B lottery. Another alternative to consider is the J1 visa. I am almost an evangelist for it because I don't think people actually understand the J1 program. A lot of people talk mainly about interns and trainee programs, but they really quickly forget that there's other types of J1s. J1 specialists, which is that you are a specialist in a given field, you have a level of expertise that you can prove to the government, and you are sharing that expertise with a private organization in the United States. Is it only a 1-year visa? Yes. But is it technically renewable? Yeah, because you can leave the country and get a brand new 1 year and then come back to the United States. There's also the J1 Research Scholar Program, which I think is actually much more compelling because it's a 5-year visa, guys, right? Doesn't have a cap. It also allows you to have your spouse get work authorization as well, which is very different from the H-1B until you get an I-140 approved. Research scholars are not only working for public institutions. You're allowed to work for private institutions. You can actually be a data scientist working for JP Morgan as a research scholar, so long as your work is contributing to or conducting something that's innovative or research oriented. And we're living in the day and age where innovation and arguments related to research are very expansive, right? So you need to get a really good attorney, a great attorney that's willing to make those arguments to make it work, because engineers, data scientists, people in STEM, there are a lot of research oriented elements even to your day-to-day job, from cloud infrastructure to kind of how you develop like systems internally for a banking infrastructure.
All right. And what's the best way to explore these options? Because I can see a couple of questions as well that, is it applicable to me as a student who's in the US? And how do I just know whether,
So how you can find out is, of
Hey,
course,
Nicole.
oh.
Hey, Nicole, sorry to cut you off. There is a very big news coming on X. Would you allow me to say that?
So what is the news on X? Do you want to kind of paste it in chat first?
It's a statement by press secretary of USCIS.
Okay.
Okay. How should I copy paste it? She has Caroline Levitt. She's a USCIS from the White House. She has given a statement. This is not an annual fee. It is a one-time fee that applies only to the petition. Those who already hold H-1B visa and currently outside the country right now will not be charged 100,000 to re-enter.
Oh, so this was actually the update that we talked about earlier, because this was from about an hour ago.
Yeah, that's right. This is a 1 hour ago.
Right. So if anything, the funny thing is that the most clear explanation that we've gotten so far is actually the USCIS memo, right? And there's still a contradiction between the memo and what the press secretary said, because the press secretary said this doesn't apply until like the upcoming lottery cycle, but the USCIS memo is like September 21st, guys, starting tomorrow, 12:01 a.m. EDT. So even then, like I still don't know what to believe. But the nice thing about the memo is that that's policy guidance. That is a policy that has been put into place.
Sorry, if you could just go back to what you were saying, what's the best way to assess? Because I think this is where we feel stuck, that, okay, there are other options, but what do I do?
Right. So the best way to assess is two ways, right? At the end of the day, I know that every single one of you are probably great researchers, right? Go onto the internet. The internet is your oyster. And I'm not saying that internets would replace a lawyer at the end of the day, right? But you can get some preliminary insight into like what these things are. I also think that ChatGPT, again, I know so many people are going to flame me about this, right? But never use ChatGPT as a source of truth, but use it as an ideation point, right? How do I just generally learn about what my options are, right? What does these things feel like and look like? And of course, the second thing, and I know many of you will feel that I'm being biased, at the end of the day, the only person who's really going to know is a credible attorney. right? We live and breathe this stuff. We think so much about visas and like how to utilize them, what the exceptions are, right? Because at the end of the day, this is our practice. So if you are interested in exploring what your options are, you need to meet with an attorney who is very familiar with your circumstances. Hey, have you worked with someone before that's on F1 OPT that's trying to settle in the United States? Have you been able to walk someone down that journey of F1 to O1 to EB1? Like, have you been through that scenario before, or have you worked with people in my industry? So whether it's with Manifest or, you know, the organization that I currently work for and that I lead the practice for, right? That's one thing. But another thing is that you need to be reaching out to those networks to see who can you talk to give you that advice.
All right. So I think we'll definitely give some links to the people who want to reach out and talk to you about these
Yeah,
options.
for sure. We do questionnaires. So we have a quiz. It's a pretty substantive quiz. So when you reach out to us, we're going to be able to point you in the right direction and see how we can best help you. The one thing about Manifest is that we're going to be starting a series, an O1 course in October. So if you're somebody who doesn't feel like they quite qualify, but you want to be given tips and tricks and a direction to get to the point where your application might seem very suitable for an O1, it might be a great opportunity for you to reach out to us for that. We also have an opportunity matching program. So for individuals who may have a couple criteria already met for the O1, we can help you get into a position where a third criteria, which is the requirement for the O1, becomes much more realistic for you. We will drop some links and some information on the chat, but the best way to reach out to us to get even into a consultation or see how we can help you is to actually email us at help@manifestlaw.com.
All right, great.
Mhm.
How are we on the time, Nicole? There are a few questions left.
Sure.
Can we take them up?
Yeah, sure. I have about 8 minutes left before my next thing.
All right, we'll do it quickly. Vinith, do you have a question?
Sure. Thank you so much for doing this. So my question is, I have a valid H1B stamp valid until next year. So if I change employers and get an H1B transfer, does the 100K apply in this case? Given I already have a valid H1B, it will be a transfer.
So yeah, I mean, if I had to fight USCIS for it, if I was your advocate, I would say, listen, your memo said or. It said or. Those word choices matter. It basically indicates to me that one of those three things needed to exist for the proclamation not to apply to you. So the fact that you have a valid stamp, let's say, until a certain date, that pre-existed September 21st means that you are exempted from this is the argument I would try to make. But here's the problem, is that this is just a speculative argument. I don't know until I file it, right? But if I'm interpreting it the way that I'm interpreting it, then technically this wouldn't necessarily apply to you. But what happens when your stamp is no longer valid? What happens if you no longer have a valid approval notice, but you decided to revitalize your H1B? How does that work? We have no idea because it's not explained in any of the memorandums or anything outside of this.
All right. Okay. And just one more. So given I have a valid H1B, can I travel outside US for some time, or it's not recommended as of now?
You technically can, but I still don't recommend it. I think like my motto, let's say it, or like the thing that I'm shouting to the rooftops for everyone to hear is that luxury is it's a luxury travel right now. Like travel is a luxury. If you can just stay in the United States until things calm down or until we get more, let's call it anecdotal evidence or more guidance, it's just better to stay put.
Got it. Sure. Thank you so much.
No problem.
All right, Yogesh.
Yes, hello. Hi, Nicole. Thank you for doing this. So my question is, so I've also put it in the chat. So my H1B extension petition was approved in December 2024, and starting December 2024 to 2027, and I just now came to India to get the visa stamping. So I'm assuming this will not affect me. And the second question is also, does it apply for new H4? Given that I'm going to get married soon, so I'm going to apply for the H4 for my spouse from here in probably in a couple months. So will that apply, or in this case, am I safe and my future spouse is safe from this one?
So for your first point, I will say that according to what we're seeing right now, you should be safe because you already have an approved petition, right? It's just that where I paused, I'm not going to lie to you, Yogesh, is actually something that I said earlier, which is that the Department of State hasn't really said anything, right? This is all USCIS memos and then an explanation from the press secretary. And the person who actually controls your ability to enter the United States is actually the Department of State, not USCIS. It's a separate agency. But again, taking a look at all of the evidence, I do think that you should be okay. But this is such an evolving kind of scenario. Like, look at like the conversation that Shachi and I just had like 20 to 30 minutes ago until this memorandum came in, right? I think you're gonna know more in the next couple days, but as of right now, try to hold steady. I would still do the visa stamping process where possible, only because chances are there's going to be some sort of lawsuit. There's going to be some sort of kind of stay in the situation because of how things have unfolded. Can I guarantee that? No, but I really do think with all of the whisperings and all the discussions in the Immigration Lawyers Association that these are going to happen. When it comes to your spouse on the H4, I want to remind everyone that the proclamation doesn't really talk about H4s. There's not really references to the H4. It's primarily on the H1B. I would like to think that that means that your wife is going to be okay if you are okay.
Okay, so sorry, just a quick follow-up. So basically that means I should continue what I'm doing with the stamping. I have all the dates and everything taken. So I should not have to cancel anything right at the moment then.
Because how would you come back, I guess is the question.
Right, that's also true, yeah.
Right, so it's like you might as well do it at this point because it's going to put you in the best position, because if there is an extension to this proclamation, then at least you already got your stamping done before whatever that proclamation was extended to.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
No problem.
All right, I think we'll take probably the last question. Kumar? Kumar, are you there? All right, Ajinkya?
Sure. Thank you so much for doing this. Actually, I joined late, so I'm not sure if this was covered. I wanted to ask if I'm an existing student in the US, so does it exempt, are the student visa holders on OPT who seek to change the status to H1B exempt from this, or does it apply to them as well?
So I want to make it clear. Did you win the lottery this year and you filed a change of status to the H1B and it's still pending?
No. Actually, I have not graduated yet. I'm still a F1 student holder. I have a F1 visa. I will be graduating in December. So I wanted to ask if this will be applicable for me as well, like because I'm right now in the US, and it read that people who are trying to enter the US are suspended or trying to enter from outside. So my question was that our student holder, yeah,
So
exempted from.
this particular order and this particular executive action is 100% just has to do with H1B holders. It doesn't have anything to do with F1s in particular. So you should be okay. So your ability to travel shouldn't be impacted. It's just, I keep on repeating this, but it's so true. And I think Shachi, you kind of hold it true as well, is that travel is a luxury, guys. Do not travel unless you absolutely have to. This is not the time to be going to Cabo or to Cancun to have some good fun, right? If you don't need to travel, you should just stay in the United States.
Oh, okay. Thank you. No, actually, I didn't ask about travel. Like, basically, when I'll apply for an OPT, will my company also have to pay that 100K whenever I'll get my H1B? Because I will be.
This is all about the H1B. The 100K only comes in when you decide to transition into the H1B, right? So as of right now, for OPT or it doesn't have an impact.
I think one last question from Nitish, because he's been trying from a really long time. Nitish, just go ahead.
Hi, Siti. Thanks for hosting this. So I have a I-797 approval copy, which I got approved in this year, January. But I still did not went for stamping, and I want to change my employer also. So will it still applicable the fees? The fees will be applicable for me or not?
Assuming that the or statement holds true, right? And I know I keep on holding on to this, but at the end of the day, employer, right? If the or statement holds true, then you should be okay. But at the end of the day, it's hard to say because everything's so vague, right? Technically speaking, you already have an approved H1B. maybe it's going to be okay because you have it, but it's hard to say because it says that it only applies prospectively to petitions that have not yet been filed. And if you decide to file a change of employer, that's technically a new application. But the other parts are also true. You are already a beneficiary of an already approved petition. So that technically meets one of the 3 requirements, but it's so unclear. Like actually, if you take a look at this memo, it's a 1-page document. I don't know the last time that any of us have seen a policy memorandum that was only 1 page without an example. So I'm curious if this was like churned out very quickly. So there's still more clarifications that we need, guys.
Right.
So even if I don't go stamping and if I proceed with the current employer also, I will not have this fees applicable, right?
Technically, if you don't change employers and you stay put and you stay with the same employer, then this 100K fee should not apply to you, at least according to this USCIS policy memorandum.
Okay, sure. Thanks.
So, Nicole, thank you so much. I think we started off at a very different note.
I know.
Very different note. So I think the next few days are going to be super important.
For sure. I think just to make it very clear, the breath of relief that we have is like if you already have an approved H1B or a visa stamp, there isn't this like mad rush to like get to the country or get to the United States before the 21st. But where I don't have a sigh of relief just yet is functionally, right? If I'm domestically transferring an application, if I, like we went through so many scenarios today, like what if it is valid now, but I need to renew 6 months from now, right? It's no longer currently valid. Does that mean that the proclamation applies to me? Yes or no? That part is still really unclear, right? What if I have to go for stamping outside of the country? Is the Department of State going to treat it the same as USCIS? I have no idea, right? I can only tell all of you based on my experience and based on these interpretations to the best of my ability right now.
And thank you so much for doing it. And I think a lot of questions, a lot of queries answered by you today. And yeah, hopefully, let's see if there are more clarifications. We'll reach out to you again to give us some
For
sense.
sure. So thank you so much for having me. Thank you everyone for being here. I know that some people are watching on YouTube as well. If you guys really enjoyed our conversation today, or if you feel like today was really helpful, what would be really great for us here at Manifest, especially since we are a growing organization and our belief is to share insights and share the things that we learn publicly, openly, and transparently without too much of a cost or even a cost at all. It would be great if you can leave us a great Google review. If you can go online and leave us a great review about how you've had a great experience being part of this webinar or the series, that would be very helpful for us. But thank you so much, everyone, for being here and having me.
Thank you, Nicole. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining in. And yeah, we'll keep you posted on all the latest updates and the developments over the next week.
Sachi, one question, if you can answer.
Sure, very quickly, because I do have to go.
Sure. So I have my flight booked tomorrow, and I'm going for my H1B stamping, and my current visa is expired 8th May 2025. So as we had discussions, like multiple people had questions, so it would be the same situation for me as well, right? I won't be like affected by it, right?
Well, are you in the US right now?
Yeah.
So, okay, I just wouldn't travel unless you had to. Like if you're here on valid H1B, right, and you know that things are ever evolving between today and tomorrow, I just wouldn't leave the country right now. Because you already see like the discrepancies between what the press secretary is saying, what USCIS is saying, what the proclamation says. I don't even know what the Department of State is going to say tomorrow, today. We also don't know what the lawsuits are going to do. It's too tumultuous. I would postpone your trip.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Like it's just travel is a privilege and a luxury at the moment, and I dissuade people from doing it where possible.
Okay.
Thank
you.
Would F1 OPT, sorry, but would F1 OPT holders will also be affected? Because I lost my passport and I just want to get my F1 stamping done from India.
The proclamation 100% has to do with H1B and does not have anything to do with an F1. But I want to really make it very clear that travel, again, is a luxury. If you don't need to travel, it is always better to be in the US. Because what happens if you leave the country tomorrow, right, to get this new stamp, and then they announce a proclamation saying now F1s have to pay $1 million to come back into the country.
Everything is so uncertain. You're right. You're right.
It's too uncertain. It's too uncertain. So until things stabilize, I call it after the first year, it might be easier to kind of predict what's going to happen.
Okay. Thank you so much, Nicole. Appreciate all your time.
No problem. Okay. Thank you everyone for having me.